RetroDaze.
In the vast, sugary world of candy, there exists a peculiar category of confection that has always boggled my mind. I assume this type of candy, if you can even call it that, must be somewhat popular because despite their peculiar relevance in the 70s and 80s, they still exist on store shelves.
You'll find them in corner stores, candy shops, supermarkets, and drugstores. They'll line the shelves or hang from product hooks. They can be seasonal or not. And seriously, I just don't understand how they continue to thrive. More than ever, we'll look to your comments on this video to help us understand the bewildering staying power of wax candy. The one-word answer to our question of why is wax candy a thing is, surprisingly, oil. The new oil industry began in 1859, bringing with it kerosene, which provided a new and cheap way to illuminate homes. In 1879, British Chandler James Wilson wrote, "This flood of American petroleum poured in upon us by millions of gallons and gave light at a fifth of the cost of the cheapest candle." With all of this oil also came paraffin wax, which was a byproduct of its distillation. Rather than disposing of the wax, this abundant and cheap substance was sold for use in manufacturing candles, sealing waxes, crayons, and wax cylinders used for audio recordings at the time. In 1912, using a refined food-grade paraffin, John W. Glenn introduced penny chewing gum novelties, and it was a hit. According to CandyFavorites.com, Glenn Confections was busily engaged in producing their popular paraffin novelties and continued to do so after becoming the wax candy division of W&F Manufacturing Company. Wax horse teeth, said to taste like wintergreen, and other novelties chattered profitably down Glenn's production line while Franklin Gurley explored further expansion opportunities for his rapidly growing company. This included carefully molded tavern candles in the shape of Santa, reindeer, elves, pumpkins, and other Christmas and Halloween favorites. There are some things that seem to have always existed, items that from my earliest memories were always just there. The interesting thing about products like these is, due to their pervasive nature, I tend to ignore them. It's almost as if there's nothing particularly special about a candy that's perpetually on store shelves. Such was the case with wax bottles. Vinnie Cavello created wax bottles, or nickel nips, for a post-prohibition world as a nod to outlawed beverages. What has become a novelty candy was at the time a serious statement about how the US treated alcohol production and sale. Of note is that CandyFavorites.com further reports that Glenn Confections produced the popular ancestors of today's Wacko Wax and nickel nips. The candy itself, of course, contained no alcohol. The tiny wax bottles instead were filled with fruit-flavored liquids. According to Brianna York for SnackHistory.com, this is how the name of the candy came about. The nick was for the nickel price, and then the rest of the name references the old method of opening other wax bottles where you nipped off the top of the bottle to access the liquid inside. Every time I wandered into a corner store as a kid, I saw these unassuming little bottles filled with colored syrup hanging eagerly from wall displays. I probably asked my parents about it at some point, and they likely responded, "You don't want those, they're mostly wax." And so I went through much of my childhood familiar with the strange candy, but never having actually tried them. After all, why would I? They're mostly wax. That was until one fine summer day when I was out playing with some friends and we decided to pop into a local corner store. We all dug into our pockets and came out with various coinage. No paper money here, folks. I remember one of my friends grabbing a bag of the wax bottles and I questioned his choice. I mean, really? You're gonna pick a bag of wax over Dipsy Doodles, over a Fifth Avenue bar, over a Hostess snack cake? Alas, young Charles didn't have enough money for any of those particular treats, but he did have enough for wax bottles. Back outside on the hot sidewalk, we shared our food around. Some chips were traded for a slug of Yoo-Hoo, a bite of a snowball for a handful of nerds, and somewhere in all the trading, I ended up with a wax bottle. Charles demonstrated the peculiar trick of biting the hard wax end off. He chewed it a little before spitting it out and proceeding to suck the sweet juice from the interior. I followed his lead and found the entire process far too involved for little reward. I even tried chewing on the wax, but being one of those unfortunate kids with braces, I'd known all too well the flavorless tedium that awaited. My orthodontist kept me in a lifetime supply of the stuff, doled out in tiny white containers. Maybe that's the real reason wax candy never appealed to me. Or maybe it was because the novelty of the stuff couldn't outweigh the disappointing results.
Hey, hold on for 15 seconds, voiceover John, on Cam John here for a simple request of our viewers. If you're enjoying today's topic, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that notification bell so you never miss another nostalgic moment with us here at RetroDaze. Okay, get back to work, you slouch.
Hey, sir, try our wax lips. It's the candy of 1,000 uses.
Like what?
1, a humorous substitute for your own lips.
Keep going.
2, ooh, I'm needed in the basement.
The closest I ever came to enjoying a wax-based novelty was around Halloween, when I'd invariably get wax lips in my trick-or-treat bag. The wax lips were first produced by Glen Confections, but were also manufactured by other companies over the years. For instance, CandyFavorites.com reports that Ben Shepard bought Glen Confections' unique wax candy equipment and hauled it from Buffalo to Secor, where he continued production of the nostalgic favorites. Despite a continuing national sweet tooth and the predictable Halloween demand for the novelties, Challenger Candy Company lasted only a few years before going bankrupt. American Candy Company of Selma, Alabama, in business since 1900, stepped in once again to rescue wax lips from oblivion. And now, Tootsie Roll Industries owns the rights to wax lips and sells them under the branding of Wacko Wax. Despite their longevity, like Nickel Nips, I never quite understood the appeal. I'd of course unwrap them and pop the lips over my mouth, but then I'd be baffled as to what the distributors expected me to do with the dumb things. They were too uncomfortable to use as an actual costume, and they tasted like nothing, or maybe slightly of cherry? Was I supposed to chew it like bubblegum, despite the weird texture and lackluster flavor? Wax fangs added a little bit more to like, but in the end, it was just the same old hunk of wax. Why were these novelties so popular? I never did figure it out, and the mystery still haunts me. What haunts me even more is that this candy outlived other, much better treats from the 80s. If the previous entries weren't baffling enough, there's one more bizarre treat, I hesitate to call any of these things candy, that haunted store shelves. The wax harmonica, originally sold as the Wowie Whistle, also originates with Glen Confections. The first iterations of these things, I must admit, were actually glorious. They really leaned into the Halloween connection and cast them in orange wax. The black labels depicted a witch flying across a full moon, and packaging often displayed a hooting owl. Other editions might add bats, cats, or other Halloween imagery. The gimmick with the Wowie Whistle, as well as later harmonicas, is that they actually produced whistle sounds, if not exactly music. And sure, at least in this case, I can absolutely see myself springing for a vibrant orange Halloween harmonica for both the design and ability to play them like little instruments. I could swear there was a later iteration that looked more like an actual harmonica, often cast in red wax, but we can't seem to turn up a thing about it in our research. Perhaps yet another job for Alyssa, the intrepid video editor and research dynamo.
That was one waxy episode. There were so many unique and unusual treats to be found in candy stores during our childhood that I'm sure we'll return to the topic in the future with another set of peculiar edibles. And if that's truly the case, loyal viewer, well, we have 2 questions for you today. First, were you a fan of wax candy? And second, what other strange treat categories should we cover for future installments? I would love to hear about it down in the comments. And if you enjoy our content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and maybe even activating that ubiquitous notification bell. It really does make a huge difference. Let's meet again next week to celebrate yesteryear, right here on RetroDaze.
Clicky clacky.